You're about to enter into Monica's universe, where her inquiry may align you to new dimensions. You're about to cross a threshold into the unknown. Surrender to the experience. Call down to initiate in year 1. Epictetus. No man is free who is not a master of himself. One of the things that I'm deeply in contemplation about is what identity really means. Do I need to identify as a person, as my gender, as my vocation, just as a human being, or as a polymath that has so many different variations depending on which angle I am willing to serve and to express in that given moment? Quote, I thought of a labyrinth of labyrinths, of one sinuous, spreading labyrinth that will encompass the past and the future and in some way involve the stars. Jorge Luis Borges, The Garden of the Forking Paths in Ficciones, 1944, end of quote. Synthesis. What is converging in my life right now is the recognition that everything I have been building interiorly for a long time is slowly ready to move into the world. And the steadiness I feel in that recognition comes from the quality of the interior work itself, the untangling of the chords that shaped me prior to choosing otherwise, the freeing of space that was previously occupied by patterns that were never mine to carry. I feel blessed because I've been meeting with Mark Jones for 18 months steadily to support the navigation into my psychic untangling. Any cords that define me are now being freed by the space. It is a human action at its best, far away from being an effort or hard work. Who is Mark Jones, you may ask? He is an astrologer and psychotherapist whose books and teachings have accompanied my understanding of evolutionary astrology for a long time. Long enough that I waited for many years before I felt ready to receive a reading and direct transmissions from him. That moment arrived in 2024. We met for the first time in mid-October 2024, and a couple of months later, I knew I was ready to commit to a deeper working relationship. These are conversations where the chart serves as a living map, and you're always the territory, always interior, always personal, always asking what is actually driving this, and what would it feel like to stop being driven by something that was never yours to carry in the first place. My Pluto in the 8th house requires this kind of work. It cannot operate on the surface. It is important to have a guide who can hold the depth without flinching, who reflects what is said with precision and returns it with a quality of witness that makes it possible to see something that was previously too close to be seen clearly. Trust is my middle name. Inner trust is my inner and outer authority. Trust is the architecture of my value. Quote, time is the substance I am made of. Time is a river which sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger which destroys me, but I am the tiger. It is the fire which consumes me, but I am the fire. Jorge Luis Borges, The New Refutation of Time, in Other Inquisitions, 1952. Facts. I had my solar return last week. My sun is in Taurus in the 3rd house, and within days of that threshold, Mercury is returning to Taurus, and Mars is returning to Aries, and Venus follows, returning to Gemini in the 5th house. 4 personal planets resetting within the same window, the new solar year opens. The entire personal field sees itself again from the very beginning, all at once, in the first days of year 5. The full moon landed exactly on my natal moon in Scorpio in the 9th house, and it formed a finger of God, Yod, with Saturn and Venus as the 2 base points pointing directly to that moon. A finger of God is a precise convergence, 2 inconjunct lines meeting at the apex that has no choice but to receive what they're sending. Saturn and Venus both in quincunx, 150 degrees aspect, to my moon in Scorpio meant that the full illumination of the emotional body arrived through a double adjustment from structure and from creative value simultaneously. This was a full calibration, a precise demand from the chart that I received the instruction the moon was carrying in its own natal degree. My moon rules my north node in Cancer in the 5th house. The evolutionary direction was lit completely at that moment. From an uncomfortable body sensation to small calibrations, to mutations that slowly become transmutation. The transiting nodal axis is sitting on my natal Uranus in Virgo in the 7th house, and my natal Saturn in Pisces is in the 1st house. The nodal axis crossing both of these simultaneously means that the evolutionary pressure of this moment is landing directly on the axis between personal identity and encounter with the other, on the structure I carry as self and the liberating impulse that has always moved through relationship. The nodes on Uranus and Saturn together are asking what authority looks like when it has been freed from the conditioning that originally shaped it. Transiting Uranus in Gemini in my 4th house is squaring that same nodal axis. Uranus in Gemini in the 4th house is liberating the root, the interior life, the foundation of how I think from ground up. The 4th house is the private interior, the ancestral structure, what was laid down before conscious choice. Uranus moving through Gemini there is rewiring the foundational mental and communicative patterns at the level of origin. The square to the transitional nodal axis from the position means that the disruption of the root is directly enrolled in the evolutionary direction. The emergence of authority is the theme this whole configuration is pointing toward. Saturn in Aries in my 2nd house, building stable structure in the domain of material value and resources. Mercury returning to Taurus in the 3rd house, reseating the mind and communication on solid embodied ground. The nodal axis activating natal Saturn and natal Uranus simultaneously means that the structure of identity and the liberating impulse are both being enrolled in what is emerging. Authority that is earned through embodiment. I dismantle every hierarchy that arrives morally imposed from the outside. Value that is established through what I have actually built in the domain of communication and creative expression. Every personal planet returning to its natal degree while simultaneously being pressed by an outer planet, Mercury and Sun and Jupiter in Taurus receiving the Pluto square. The mind, identity, and ideologies renewing under transformative pressure. Mars returning to Aries receiving the Jupiter square from Cancer, asking what the drive is actually feeding. Venus returning to Gemini in the 5th house, arriving into territory Uranus just opened. The creative principle recedes into a field that has already been liberated. Saturn in Aries in my 2nd house is forming a quincunx to natal Pluto retrograde in Virgo on my 8th house. What I'm building in the domain of material value and resources sits in permanent calibration with the interior transformative process of the 8th. Saturn in Aries wants form, wants concrete action, wants established something. Pluto retrograde in Virgo in the 8th house holds the requirement to release, to let the interior do its work before anything is grasped. The quincunx between these two asks me to adjust continuously, holding what I am structuring in calibration with what I'm releasing. The South Node in Virgo carries a deep prior pattern of using refinement as a way of managing what Pluto actually wants to transform. The quincunx says the pattern of self-correction needs to be released at the root so the transformation can move through. Pluto crosses a threshold with great deliberation. It circles, retreats, returns, circles again, gathering interior pressure until the crossing can behold what is arriving. Stationing retrograde today, still approaching my Aquarius ascendant, Pluto is asking whether I am ready for what April 2027 will demand. The retrograde until mid-October is the last interior preparation before the threshold becomes a permanent in 2028. Neptune in Aries is squaring my nodal axis. Neptune dissolves the fixed coordinates of the evolutionary direction. Capricorn, as the past pattern, releases its structural rigidity. Cancer, as the future direction, releases its sentimental image of what nourishment and creativity are supposed to look like. Neptune is removing the pictures I have held of both where I have been and where I'm going, so that what is actually true about both can be felt directly, without the mediation of a prior image. Jupiter in Cancer squaring natal Mars in Aries in my third house asks whether what I am pushing towards in the domain of mind and communication is something that genuinely feeds my life. Mars returns to its natal degree inside this square. The new cycle of will begins with the question already present. I am a 6-2 profile and a life path number 6. The 6-2 stays aloof until needed, observing from a distance by design. The life path 6 carries the same frequency, the one who lives the ideal, who becomes the living example, the role model, so to speak. Both sixes converging in a year 5 means that the disruption of this year is the moment when the aloof observer is called down from the roof because what she has been embodying is now needed. Year 5 personally and year 1 for humanity means that the change I am moving through is part of a collective reset. The personal field reorganizing at every level simultaneously is part of what year 1 looks like for a 6-2 in the third phase. Invitation. Language is a tool like techne, and what emerges with practice are skills. Would you like to learn these languages so you can become adept with these powerful skills? Stay tuned. What is coming next week will give you the tools to read your own life with this precision. Quote, a man sets out to draw the world. As the years go by, he peoples a space with images of provinces, kingdoms, mountains, bays, ships, islands, fishes, rooms, instruments, stars, horses, and individuals. A short time before he dies, he discovers that the patient labyrinth of lines traces the alignments of his own face. Jorge Luis Borges, Epilogue of El Hacedor, Dream Tigers, 1960. Below are 3 recommendations that require time and attention. 2 things most of us struggle to find these days. Where in your life can you make space for yourself is my question. The first one is The Shifting Apollo by Jason Giordani. It's a link to Substack. The second one is A Polar Money lecture at the Global Economy and Finance Conference in Seoul by Saifedean Amours. And the third one is Mark Jones on Uranus in Gemini with Bernhard Gunther and Laura Matsue Gunther. May the force be with your curiosity. Have a great week.